What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode. 2 a.m. in Sweden, aka we got next, aka you probably know it as Rolling with Hayes. That's what we used to call it. So we're kind of going back to that, and a lot of different things that we absolutely have to cover in today's episode when it comes to the NFL honors. So the event happened on Thursday around 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and you had before the show, of course, you saw Bill Belichick and his girlfriend. During the show, of course, all the different things Snoop Dogg was saying. Deion Sanders was there. Of course, Deion Sanders ended up hiring Marshall Falk, and that was like another one. But the main reason why we're going over this is the awards. I'm going to get my commentary, get my thoughts on everything that just went on that night. Kind of the first one, and it was 49 out of 50 votes for Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, and it went to Jayden Daniels. Nobody could say anything about Jayden in terms of the year that he had because Jayden ended up, let's see if we can pull this up. Jayden threw for almost 3,600 yards, passing yards, which is solid just in itself. And then he had 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, solid numbers over there. And then, of course, he had a QBR throughout the whole season of 100. If you look at some of the better quarterbacks on the year this year, Joe Burrow had a quarterback rating of 108. Jared Goff had a quarterback rating of 111. Baker Mayfield had a quarterback rating of 106. And then the highest looks like Lamar at 119, which that's a topic we'll get into in a little bit. But the main part about this is Jayden was much deserving of Rookie of the Year. The only other rookie that at one point I said it's much closer than it looked was going to be Bo Nix. Bo Nix did throw for 29 touchdowns and then 12 interceptions. Only thing about that is his team started to fall off, and Jayden Daniels and the Commanders just kept going. The only other one that received a vote this year was Brock Bowers, and you can't argue with the numbers that Brock Bowers ended up having on this year. He did have almost 1,200 receiving yards. He had 5 touchdowns, and then he did have 112 receptions on 153 targets, played every single game, which is kind of another thing that you do have to get credit to. Other likes of players that played every game, of course, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Brian Thomas Jr., Drake London, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jerry Jeudy, they all played all 17 games. So for Brock Bowers, as a rookie, to end up playing all 17 games with 112 receptions, I still think Jayden Daniels should have been unanimous. There's no reason why you give that one to Brock Bowers, but if there's anyone that you throw a stupid vote in there for, it is Brock Bowers. So that's kind of the first award. That's an easy one that we all knew should have gone to. The next one we'll end up going with is going to be Defensive Rookie of the Year, and that did go to Jared Verse. So Jared Verse is another one that 1,000% is worthy of it. I don't see any reason why anyone else. Let me take that back. I do see reason as to how others could have gotten it. Let's see, Defensive Rookie. Yeah, so for anyone that doesn't know, he plays for the LA Rams. He kind of was able to take over Aaron Donald's position to an extent, which that's a huge hole to end up filling because of the fact Aaron Donald is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But it also just shows you what all goes into end up basically winning that award, because there were a good amount of rookies that were out there. I'm trying to be able to pull up. Okay. Here you go. So Jared Verse got 37 of the first place votes. Eagles cornerback, which was Quinyon Mitchell, which he was able to garner some of the first place votes. He had 9. And then Jared Verse's teammate, actually, Braden Fisk, got 3rd. 4th was Cooper DeJean, and then 5th was Chop Robinson. So just kind of going into some of the numbers when it does come to Jared Verse, let's see if is it going to come up for me. No, No, I don't want that. I kind of want to look at the whole season. Okay. So he had 4.5 sacks. He had 2 pass deflections, 2 forced fumbles, 36 tackles, and then he had 30 assisted tackles. So he played 17 games, started 16 of them. So he played the whole season. And on defense, that's a big thing to end up saying. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, you see where they are and how they've helped the Eagles. So you can tell why they're there. And then Braden Fisk is another one. So congrats over there to Jared Verse. You can't be mad at that one. Kind of the next position I do want to end up going into, if this ends up pulling up for me. Let's go one more. I do want to talk about offensive and defensive player of the year. Those are kind of two that you kind of end up knowing how that was going to go. The first one is offensive player of the year went to Saquon Barkley. As everyone knows, he had a season for the history books. Had over 2,000 yards rushing. He did a lot of things for that offense for the Eagles. Other ones up there was Lamar Jackson, Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry, and then also Joe Burrow. But Joe Burrow's team was not that good, which is why it was the way it was. Just kind of some of the other numbers when it comes to Saquon Barkley. Saquon did have 2,000 rushing yards. He had 13 touchdowns and essentially averaged 125 yards per game. The other one that if you watched any of the other episodes I talked about a lot was Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry did have 1,900 rushing yards, and both those players just went to solid systems that you knew that they were going to end up taking off with. So congratulations to them on that. Kind of just looking at it from the receiving end for Saquon, he had 33 receptions, 278 yards, and then 2 touchdowns as well. So you go with the 2,000 rushing yards and then top that with the 278 receiving yards. And he only had 2 fumbles, 1 lost, 1 they end up recovering. You really can't be mad at that, honestly. And he has for his career right now 7,200 rushing yards. So congrats to Saquon on that one. Kind of flipping over to defensive player of the year, and that goes to the man Pat Surtain, aka Patrick Surtain, that did end up holding down that defense for the Denver Broncos. You saw the Denver Broncos defense was solid. I would say one of the top 5 defenses on the year, and he was a big reason for it. They've had to partially rebuild some of the pieces around on that defense, and Pat Surtain was a big reason for it. Others that end up receiving votes, you had Trey Hendrickson, you had Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, and then Zach Bond. But when you have Pat Surtain winning 26 of the first place votes, which came out, they do a calculation, it was 330 points. Next was Trey Hendrickson with 205, which was closer. It wasn't unanimous. When you look at the different players, they were the best ones on their team. But that defense was just really good, and Pat Surtain was one of them. They talk about him, of course, in the conversation, similar to how you had like Darrelle Revis at one point and Jalen Ramsey during like his prime years. That's kind of the conversation you end up putting Pat Surtain in, because you're not going to get a lot of receiving yards off on him. It doesn't matter who you're putting over there with him. So Pat Surtain won that one. Again, just going over some of them. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Jayden Daniels. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Jared Verse. Defensive Player of the Year, Pat Surtain. Offensive Player of the Year, Saquon Barkley. Comeback Player of the Year did go to Joe Burrow. If you remember kind of how last year did go compared to this year, you partially see why. Now, we're going to get into some of the controversy. The other part of my controversy we will talk about when we end up getting over into the MVP, which is where a lot of people have differences of opinion. But the big thing for me is Joe Burrow was first, J.K. Dobbins was second, Sam Darnold was third, DeMar Hamlin was fourth, and Christian Gonzalez was fifth. Breaking down kind of how it is, a lot of them had injuries. So Joe Burrow, of course, came back from his injuries. He had to rehabilitate his wrist, which was a big thing. And he honestly, if his team was better, he'd be in the MVP conversation even more than he was. He had a stellar season, which is why they ended up giving him Comeback Player of the Year. J.K. Dobbins coming off his Achilles injuries, and he had a good season, was second. Sam Darnold, he just was not on good teams. And for him to end up turning his career around, the team's path this year, because they did not think they were going to be where they were. So you almost have to bring back Sam Darnold for the Vikings. You can't think about doing anything else. then bringing him back. You had Sam Darnold. Damar Hamlin, we all knew what happened. Now that's the controversy because they're going to throw him in there all the time because of what happened, and stop doing that. Like, I get it. I fully get it. But y'all did this last year too. There's no need to keep doing this. So that's just my 2 cents. I really think they need to chill out with this whole Damar Hamlin. Yes, what happened was bad. Don't let anyone turn this pot that I'm explaining otherwise. What happened to him was horrible. Basically, yeah, on the field. But y'all don't need to keep putting him up here for comeback player of the year just to throw some votes out there. And I know the AP voters that are doing it too. They're like, let's throw some of these like sympathy votes out there. He got more the other year, but because you know who ended up taking it away from him, which he was more deserving of. So, and then Christian Gonzalez had an injury, came back from that. So that's kind of how comeback player of the year went. Now going into coach of the year, that was, for those that know ball, can understand exactly why Coach O'Connell got it. So Coach O'Connell ended up, aka Kevin O'Connell, he received 25 of the first place votes. Dan Campbell finished second with 19 votes. And then the remaining finalists were Andy Reid, which Andy Reid's up there every year, Dan Quinn, who really did good, especially with that Commanders team turning him around, and then Sean Payton. But if you saw, again, the same way you had Sam Darnold up there for comeback player of the year, you had to put Kevin O'Connell up here for coach. What they did with that team, nothing short of sensational. Dan Campbell, of course, being second. Only reason why I would say he didn't win is because they had a great year the year before. Minnesota Vikings, they had 14 wins. So that's really why. And ignore the postseason. Regular season for what that team was thought to be compared to what they did. Congratulations to them. Dan Quinn, of course, you turned that team. You did really good, but the Vikings just had a much better year. Broncos, Sean Payton probably will be in the conversation, especially if the Broncos can do well again next year too. And then, of course, Andy Reid's always going to be up there because Andy Reid just does so much with that team. Final award is an award that people had conversations about, and we are going to get to this topic now, and that is Josh Allen winning MVP. And Josh Allen not being all-pro first team. Anyone that knows me throughout this whole year knows that I've always been on the Josh Allen bandwagon. Josh Allen is deserving of the MVP. I said that Josh Allen should have won it, and he did. And that's something that is big to end up seeing. People have the issue because you ended up being MVP, but not all-pro first team. Number one, I don't fully see how you end up making him second team. And it's happened before, but I don't see how you end up making him the MVP, but he wasn't the best quarterback for that AP All-Pro, which they are splitting the difference. Everyone can have their explanations, everyone can have their thoughts, but it was Josh Allen that had 27 first place votes compared to Lamar Jackson having 23 first place votes. And then Saquon was up there in third. Joe Burrow was up there in fourth. Jared Goff was in fifth. Again, Joe Burrow would have been much higher if his team was better. Other reason why Josh Allen ended up getting, again, let me say, he was the most valuable for his team. I'm not talking about Lamar having Derrick Henry. Josh Allen, what he did with that team is deserving of it. But I also feel that you should have given him AP first team. That's what it really should have come down to. You were splitting it. You couldn't choose, so you end up doing it. If history has always been the same, and then this year, like, we're going to split it, he's not the best, so Lamar's the best, why didn't you give it to Lamar at that point? If Lamar did that with his team, so for me, again, I'm going to say this. Lamar, I don't think was MVP this year. It was Josh Allen. Start to finish, he also beat the Chiefs. I really think that Josh Allen will start to get more. I don't think it was, people are saying DEI and stuff like that. My big thing is you should have just when you split it, that's when you're saying that your guys are split. So you're giving one to one and one to the other. Josh Allen, much deserving of MVP, but I would have liked to see him just be AP first team as well, because you're saying he was the most valuable to his team, which rightfully so. He did a lot for his team, but then you're saying that the quarterback you're looking at that by stats. But then the other one, you're looking at that by who provided more to his team. Josh Allen was a great quarterback this year. I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't see why Lamar was first team. But again, this is why we love the game of football. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not mad at either. I love both quarterbacks. I am super happy for Josh Allen. So for anyone out there that's saying that Lamar Jackson should have won, I will argue with you all on that because if even looking at stats when it comes to it, was Lamar Jackson's stats better? Yeah, probably. Just kind of looking at Lamar Jackson, he did throw for 4,100 yards. He did have, Lamar had 41 touchdowns, 41 passing touchdowns too, and only 4 interceptions. Josh Allen had 3,700 yards, 28 passing touchdowns, and then 6 interceptions. QBR was 101. Lamar's was 119. So I can kind of see it. I can get how one ends up saying that. So not going to argue against anybody out there that feels that way. It was a tough year. I like both of them. Some people have also said because it's that Nikola Jokic kind of thing of Lamar's already won 2, so just to give him a third. You do have to keep setting that bar, but this is the exciting part. I can fully see how one would end up choosing one over the other. I just wish personally you would have just given Josh Allen the AP first team. I can see it overall. Of course, the media is going to spin a lot of this. But again, congrats to both on it. Lamar is going to be up there probably again next year. Josh Allen's going to be up there again next year. And this is the exciting part of it all. So that's all I got with this one. Appreciate you all as always for rocking with us. Till next time, we out.